This is the Big Time Sports, the franchises that make mobile, HD, and broadband explode with content and commerce. We actually have a very esteemed panel here I'd like to introduce and thank them for joining us today. To my left is David Kang. David is Senior Vice President of Entertainment for Major League Baseball Advanced Media. He leads the Advanced Media Entertainment venture operations, partnering with leading music artists on their official websites and developing paid content, e-commerce, sponsorship, and ticketing revenue opportunities. To his left is Adam Shaw, a former colleague of mine at the NFL. Actually, Adam is the Senior Vice President of Distribution and Sales and Marketing for the NFL League's cable channel, NFL Network. He was hired back in 2003 and is also co-founder of AdVision, now called SpotRunner, which is an internet-based advertising concept providing local businesses an easy and affordable way to advertise on TV. That's Adam Shaw. To his left, Brian Gray, Senior Vice President and General Manager of FoxSports.com, where he oversees the programming, production, and business operations for Fox Interactive Media's leading sports site, which is FoxSports.com, and also includes Fox Sports Mobile, Scout.com, and WhatIfSports.com. Thanks for being here, Brian. And to his left is David Katz. David is currently the head of Yahoo Sports and Yahoo Studios in the Yahoo Media Group. Falling down. Oh, all right. Sorry. Jimmy, let's go to you, Jimmy. You don't have to get up and switch. Jimmy's the Vice President of Partnerships and, Strategic Development for AOL Sports and AOL News. Jimmy and his team are responsible for developing and managing the sports and news content relationships for AOL. He's been with AOL since 1995. Sorry, Jimmy, thank you for being here. And David Katz, head of Yahoo Sports and Yahoo Studios in the Yahoo Media Group here in Santa Monica. David, in his role, he drives the overall strategic direction for Yahoo Sports and also leads the studios, which is a new division that develops and produces original content for Yahoo. Thank you for being here as well, David. So the reason we've assembled the panel, and we hope many of you here are to talk with us, is that the landscape is obviously changes on an everyday basis, and there's always a new development as it relates to content and distribution. But the reason we think sports is an important part of that equation is that fans are very passionate about our form of entertainment, about sports. And a lot of the content, whether it's video, data, audio, are all digitally available to consumers to consume, and we think help drive a lot of new technologies. So what I wanted to do was sort of throw up a quick general question, maybe a vision question about where people see their businesses in 5 years, and what is the future of sports media as it relates to baseball.
Yeah, I think that clearly we intend to keep growing as quickly as we can. Major League Baseball Advanced Media is a little bit unique in that about 5 years ago, all of the baseball owners agreed on an interactive rights agreement. And so all the rights went to a separate entity called MLB Advanced Media. And so we've built one of the, I think, leading paid content models and have been experiencing tremendous growth, starting from about $5 million in revenue before MLBAM showed up to well north of $200 million in revenue for 06. And so with that, we just hope to continue to expand and to have more state-of-the-art functionality so that it is truly an interactive experience and even better than television in some ways.
So 5 years ago, people mostly saw baseball on television or heard it on their radio. Now they're watching the product pitch by pitch or live video on the web. Do you have any sort of high thoughts about how that might evolve even over the next number of years?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we've learned is that there are lots of displaced fans, whether you're a Yankees fan or a Mets fan, spread across the country. And to really create an interactive experience. So for example, one of our products called Mosaic allows you to watch 6 games concurrently, and when Barry Bonds is up at bat, there's a little alert that lets you know that. And going forward, other products that we have, for example, there are often only 15 or 16 pitches that really matter during the course of that baseball game. And and to have a condensed product that you can purchase and just watch those highlights so that you've really kind of seen the game. And it's those kinds of things that aren't that are really unique to the interactive platform. And so there's all kinds of little skunkworks projects that we're continuing to work on to try to give more value to our audience.
Great. Adam, I know NFL Network is distributed widely on cable platforms and on satellite as well, but what sort of new ways do you envision the NFL Network reaching consumers?
You know, the interesting part about the timing, you said 5 years, our broadcast rights deals go through 2011, which I think locks up what we're going to do on the major broadcasters for the next 5 years, but it sets up both from a digital media point of view as well as NFL Network to experiment over the time to come up with some oft-answered questions as to how do people really want to experience the NFL. Ratings are at an all-time high, but you do have the ability now to create a new user experience, whether it's choosing which camera angles or choosing which what the audios you want to hear, or the ability to watch the game in virtual video on demand. So I think one of the objectives over the next few years, and NFL Network will be a key component of this, is test the waters, see what's going to happen. It'll become a very good tool for us to just reach out and see how fans really want to change the way they interact with the game.
Right. I mean, one of the things that you guys have done, which is interesting to me, is a real successful video-on-demand product. So we understand the NFL Network has got exceptional programming. It's obviously mostly about football. You have live games coming up on Thanksgiving, starting on Thanksgiving for 6 weeks with 8 games. But something that hadn't been seen before, as I asked David as well, is people watch sport on TV. Well, now you have an interactive platform where you can get different kinds of NFL programming. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the VOD offering or how successful it's been?
Yeah, I mean, the VOD offering, the most popular product, not surprisingly, is the highlights. I mean, people still gravitate towards wanting to see their games, or if they miss the games, they want to catch up on that. And we're looking to find other programming that's supportive, and a lot of it is event-based in terms of what's being popular. The most recent endeavor is the Scouting Combine, which happens in February, where all the senior players and the college-eligible players come and they work out for the scouts. It used to be something which was behind closed doors, and with NFL Network for the first time they opened that up. And we create little vignettes of those player workouts, and that's been extremely popular. So I think we'll continue to discover new pieces of content and programming that work that way. And VOD is a good platform for us. The NFL tends to keep its arms around all of the content. There's a lot of concern that you don't want the product to be ubiquitous. And VOD is a very controlled environment that lets us control what's going to be available to the consumer, as opposed to sometimes the internet, the thoughts are things could run along.
Right.
So VOD has worked very well fitting into that.
That's great. And Brian, you have a unique structure. So now we're leaving the sports properties themselves with a big media company in Fox, and you guys have a very specific approach to how you are organizing your business, but again, reaching consumers differently than maybe you did 5 years ago. What are some of the things you see Fox putting out, or you see consumers consuming Fox content?
Yeah, I mean, we sit in an interesting spot right now in terms of two different dynamics. On one hand, we work pretty closely with Fox Sports Broadcast and the Fox Sports Net Regional Cable Group, 14 owned and operated FSNs around the country. And so we have to work pretty closely with them, do some things to support their core business, things that they're starting to recognize are extremely valuable in their relations with their respective affiliates, whether it's a broadcast affiliate or an MSO cable affiliate. But on the other hand, we're part of this interesting ecosystem called Fox Interactive Media, most notably MySpace and all of the social networking tools and platforms and components that we acquired when we acquired MySpace, Nuru, and even IGN to a certain extent. And so what we're trying to create is an experience that allows us to continue to leverage what we've got in spades, which is video content, video programming, analysts, talent, and that local footprint that we have through the FSNs, where a user can go right down to the team level. So if you're a fan of the Sonics and they get sold, and we've got the press conference of Howard Schultz, after the conference, somebody from FSN Northwest is typically there talking to Howard Schultz at length, and we have access to that programming, and then we can weave that into our own original programming. And you roll that out across all of our brands like Speed Channel and Fox Soccer Channel and Fuel. And so, a very core part of what we're doing is in that realm. But then we've got the ability to tap into, like I said, some of these social networking tools and those platforms to let users start to create that experience in their own way through blogs, through boards, through profiles and groups. And so it's really trying to create the combination of user-generated programming as well as video in that realm with professionally produced, credible, branded content that can go not only across the national layer, which we do on the broadcast side, but can push down into the local level between all of our FSNs.
So a little bit like Adam was mentioning the depth of programming content that's available. Maybe 5 years ago you had network or even the regional cable stuff. You're even going more granular in allowing sort of user-generated content to be a part of what's offered via Fox Sports.
I'd say that the user-generated piece is probably the part that's to come. To be fair, we probably haven't rolled out as much of those social platforms that we'd like to. Most notably, user-generated video and how does that fit into the experience. We've obviously got the technology in terms of the amount of videos that you're seeing uploaded on MySpace. So it's just a matter of us taking some of that technology and embedding it in a sports experience. But certainly with respect to the content that we produce both originally as well as in conjunction with the FSNs and FBC, we're refreshing that content daily. There's several hours a week of original programming that we will package up from that content, and then being able to push that out on other platforms. So, FoxSports.com is one platform, but we've got great relations with most all of the carriers from Verizon, Singular, Sprint to push that same content, publish that same content out on the mobile platform, and then obviously we've got the capabilities based on the way we kind of publish once and can produce once and publish a number of times across all these platforms to basically put the content where the user is going to want to consume the content. And I don't think any of us fully understand what that's going to look like. And so a lot of what we're doing is just trying to be there as these distribution platforms show up with the content, the branded content, and that programming experience that we know sports fans are looking for.
Right. Thank you. Jimmy, AOL's always been a leader in sports. Everything from content aggregation, producing video, displaying video, building community. Tell us where you think sports fans are, going to continue or evolve to consume sports media.
We've actually gone full circle. We started out back in '95 as a community-based site based on really focused on the message boards and the chat rooms and the scores and stats. And then over time, it became important to increase our access subscription base and our brand. So we went out and did deals with all the major sports properties. We had a great deal with Evan and Chris Russo at the NFL, a deal with MLB, with NASCAR, NHL, across the board. And so the deals worked at the time in building the AOL brand. We got lots of exposure on the TV networks. We've got great sports video content. But now with our recent announcement to go to a free portal site, it's really much more like David's at Yahoo. So we have not renewed several of the large league partnerships and really focused on community and social networking. So what we're going is really, these guys, Yahoo, they're the leaders in the fantasy space, and we're going after that space too. And it's also just building out our community. We created an area called Fan House where we have bloggers for each one of the NFL teams and NCAA football teams, and we'll do the same for NBA, NHL, college basketball, and so forth. So it's really going after that whole Web 2.0. We're even talking Web 2.5, all the different features. So it will be modeled, much more closely like Yahoo, where it's a game to increase your advertisers, traffic to the site and advertisers. And so far over the last 3 months since we made the change, we've seen great positive numbers.
Right. So in a way, the sports content in that model, not really a commodity, but you can get sports content on AOL. But the difference is, you're saying that the community aspects is really what AOL is bringing to the sports place.
The major problem was in having these sports deals. You looked at when people consume sports on the internet. A lot of that's at the office the morning after, and because we were a subscription service, people could not access AOL at the office. We're more a prime time consumer, so our peak hours were 7 p.m. to midnight. Those aren't the peak hours for following sports on the internet because you're watching on TV or at the games. So even though we had this great sports content, people couldn't access it at the office, but now you can. The AOL.com is a wide open portal. People can access that sports at the office.
Great. David, Yahoo is obviously a leader in sports, and you guys have been reaching out in ways beyond sort of the traditional internet portal ways to reach your consumers. How are people using Yahoo Sports to consume sports, whether it's online, mobile, or otherwise, differently now than they had in the recent past?
Well, if Jimmy's going with a Web 2.5 approach, we're going to go with a Web 3.0 approach. We're going to try to blow it out next year, whatever that means. No, but Yahoo Sports has had a very strong and significant and growing presence in the sports space over the last several years. But for us, when you think sports brands, you think typically the brands that have established themselves on television, ESPN being preeminent, as well as the leagues. So I think for us, we have to go with what our strength is, and some people here talk about community, but to us, when you talk about community, the first and really most robust and engaged audience you can find out there, and the first communities that have formed in the sports space have been around fantasy. So our goal has been to invest as much as we possibly can in fantasy to continue to expand, solidify our user base, and grow it at the same time, and add new features and remain competitive, and to see if everyone is coming after that space. It's no surprise when you've got people spending maybe on average 250 minutes per user per month playing one of these fantasy games, which is more than email users and other things. You've got a very engaged audience that's attractive to advertisers and others, and for them, fantasy becomes the destination. In general, I would say, a place like Yahoo Sports is painted both in the good and the bad of being a part of a Yahoo. We have this huge pipe, and we have tremendous distribution, and we have an ability to bring a lot of people into the tent, but we are not a singular sports brand in and of itself. So a lot of what we're trying to do is to upgrade elements of our site so that we are a destination in people's minds. So we've really upgraded the editorial side of what we're doing and started to break news and put sports journalism out there. We broke the Reggie Bush story and things like that. And we are also trying to upgrade the broadband aspects of it. Now, in a world where more and more of the leagues are putting key highlight content and game content on their own sites, one of the things that we think a place like Yahoo Sports is uniquely positioned to help out in is to bring the technological expertise to enable new products to be created, and a promotional platform by virtue of the fact that we have a global audience and we, in all of those countries, have local market opportunities. So one example of that is we partnered with the NFL this year to create a product called NFL Game Pass. And basically NFL Game Pass is DirecTV's Sunday ticket package where you get all the NFL games, but it's streamed live on the internet outside of North America. So DirecTV is still protected in the United States, but we partnered with them to provide the technology and the platform and the promotion to create a new product like that. So a lot of what we're going to try to do is build our own destination so that people think, when I want sports information, or I want to play fantasy, or I want to be a part of a sports community, come to Yahoo Sports, as well as being hopefully a valued partner for the MLBs and the NFLs of the world who are looking to take their assets and reach audiences in a different way.
Great. I want to talk to you a little bit about that content piece. So, Yahoo is traditionally, obviously, very well trafficked, has a lot of eyeballs, and now you're sort of expanding into, maybe in the case of the NFL or some others, licensing some content where it makes sense. What are you doing for creating original programming? What you had mentioned breaking some news stories and some other stuff, but what's sort of new at Yahoo to prompt you to create your own content and produce original programming as opposed to buying it or leasing it from someone else?
Sure. I mean, I think the original content falls into two buckets. You've got your text-based content that you're creating. You've got, well, three buckets then. The user-generated content that people would put out there, that I almost put in the community bucket. And then there's the video programming. So on the tech side, as I said before, we hired the former sports editor of the LA Times. We brought in a bunch of writers with great access to the leagues and to the key performers out there, and the people you want to get information from. And we've just tried to give a little bit of voice and personality to a site that needed it, quite frankly. It had great access and it had great audience, but what does Yahoo Sports stand for? So a lot of that's going to come from the content that we're putting out there through the voices that we're bringing in. On the video side, my predecessor started a very successful program called SportsStream, and SportsStream effectively, breaks down video segments around both fantasy and analysis around the sports. We're going to try to take that to the next level. We've already more than tripled the number of video that we're putting out there around that. but we're also looking at unique opportunities that we see in the marketplace around video content. So we launched a program called Fantasy Football Live this season, around football season, and it airs for 30 minutes every Sunday, 12:30 Eastern. And the idea being that that's the peak time when fantasy users are on our site making last-minute moves, looking for injury reports to know what to do with their fantasy users for that day. They've got that 30-minute window. So we looked at that and we said, how do we create a show that focuses all the information a fantasy user would want in terms of who to sit and start, who's in, who's out, what are the game conditions, how are things going to be affected. So while the networks are focused more on what are the matchups team-wise and who's going to win or lose, we don't care about that. We only care about how individual players are going to perform and who you should play in your fantasy leagues. And the show has been enormously successful for us. It blew past all of our expectations. It's interactive in the sense that we're giving our users a chance to email in, IM in, and call in and ask questions specifically of our experts. And it's a format that we really like and that we think, given the size of our audience and having kind of the largest focus group of users in the fantasy space, we need to exploit. So that's just one indication of where some of our content strategy is going around some of the elements that we think we're pretty strong in.
Great. David, I know baseball also has an operation, the bullpen, and a lot of user-generated, original programming. Is baseball proper, BAM, going to become Baseball Tonight? Is it going to be a destination for people to receive all their baseball information?
Yeah, absolutely, and we already think that we're well on our way to being that. One of the central tenets about how MLBAM thinks differently, I think, is that it really is all about making the definitive information, the definitive editorial coverage, the bullpen of writers that are covering baseball 24/7 with, the access that you get when you are the league as opposed to covering the league. And so with that, we are, making it and kind of training our audience that really everything baseball, you should first come to MLB.com. We've done this across platforms. We've built out our own in-house mobile division, and so not only do we have like #1 position on Verizon's DAC as well as the other 3 carriers, but we have one of the most highly trafficked websites. We're our own developer, etc. And one of the strong philosophies about it is that I know that there's always a tension between kind of promotional content that you might put out there, and with large traffic at portals, etc. But then really understanding that the site, and in our case the league site MLB.com, is itself tremendously important property. It's incredible traffic. We're well over 2 billion visitors this year, and it continues to grow at an astonishing rate. And with that, the idea is that, look, if we're the content creator, then why not, go into business for ourselves? And with that, we are really focused on monetizing. We look at every part of MLB.com and look at what is, reacting, what is performing, and, drive ticketing, well over 20 million tickets that we sell through it. We have e-commerce shop, and if you look at the quality of it, the merchandise is exclusive things that you can only get because we are the league, and we can create for some very special licensed products that are well photographed. We have analytics to upsell, etc. And so we really feel like there's no other place that you really need to go to get everything you want about baseball.
Adam, you guys obviously produce a lot of your own content as well on the NFL Network, and to David's point, you guys have you have access to content or to events and stuff that other media outlets don't. How can you protect the image of not being sort of a house organ, so to speak, or just being a outlet for the NFL to give their information or their spin on the information and become that real news source or that real impartial party to delivering the information?
That's one of the first potential criticisms that came up the day that the network was announced, is that we were going to be biased. How are we expected to be someone who's going to be critical of the league? And I think for 3.5 years we've, I think, done a very good job of displacing that criticism. Recently there was a quote that came out. Brian Gumbel had said on HBO that was very critical of the league, and he's one of our talent who's going to call our Thursday, Saturday games. And I think it sort of put that issue under the spotlight, and the league decided that that was a separate issue, and he's going to continue to be him and Chris Collins, they're going to call our games. If you look to the way the news organization runs, it runs like a independent news organization. And we're always going to have naysayers. We're always going to get people who think that it's just a marketing arm and a voice of the league. But if you talk to people who watch, they don't seem to think so. One other sort of interesting example of this is there's a segment we have on Wednesdays on our Total Access show where Mike Pereira, the head of officiating, comes on and we'll discuss the 4 or 5 most controversial calls of that weekend. And inevitably there are times when he has to say, look into the camera and say, we messed up. This was an error in our party. You know, he doesn't like to do it, but it's, I think, added a lot of credibility to the league that we're willing to do that. It's also very entertaining.
Right. Brian, you had talked before about you know, the capabilities that you have as part of the Fox network, as part of the Fox regional sports networks. Do you have your own original production facilities, whether that's broadband for video to, you know, for the internet, for mobile? Did you have to, as part of film, set up something different, or were you able to sort of leverage what was already in place there?
Yeah, we were able to leverage an infrastructure that has been in place that was created really to program what I would call more clips and features content. If you think about video consumption, even just a couple years ago, it was still very much bite-sized clips, and it was done in a way that, in our case, worked for our MSN video relationship, worked for our Verizon VCast relationship, allowed us to kind of package our content, some of which we would produce ourselves, others we would pull from the Fox network of brands, and package up in a way that, you know, X number of clips per day, per week would be encoded and then distributed out. And what we've done is we've kind of started to evolve that platform with more of a longer-term vision around how we want to program to sports users. We're not going to, necessarily go from, the clips we do today to zero. There's still a place for that kind of bite-sized, like I said, news and feature-based content. But we've definitely evolved to more of a programming model. Today we're taping 3 days a week. There's a Pro Football Rewind show, there's a College Coaches show where we can tap into all the press conferences around the country. And there's a weekend preview show that obviously has an angle on fantasy and the BCS, now that Fox is the BCS rights holder. And so you'll see us start to continue to evolve from that platform and just add more depth to the content. Because one of the things that
do you have your own programming group? I mean, so is it the people who are overseeing that content production are sort of separate from the television or separate from...
Yeah, and what they started to do is really reach out to, like I said earlier, whether it's the FSN operation, executive producers, coordinating producers in all the FSN regions, the guys down in North Carolina with Speed Channel, some of the local folks on the lot with the broadcast group, or with Fox Soccer Channel, Fuel, Fox Sports Espanol for that matter. So we have access to all of that as well as our own original production capabilities. And I think you'll see us, like I said, continue to evolve that programming. But one of the things that we're painfully aware of is that right now we're still, I think, in this realm where you can sell video based on the ownership ability for a sponsor to come in and kind of own an experience. And very soon that will change, and it's already starting to change, where you have to deliver the streams. And really, to be able to deliver the streams, I think you need a breadth and depth of content, as well as the ability to merchandise that content through a number of different distribution channels. And so that's why our investment will continue to be deep in content, deep in video programming, because as this entire panel knows and the audience knows, the CPMs there are kind of in everybody's favor right now. But we want to make sure that you deliver on the metrics that the advertisers and the sponsors are going to expect to see in that programming.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Jimmy. I wanted to ask you that is something similar to that, which is free versus paid content. You guys have evolved as a model, your entire business. But so the content that David produces and Brian and everybody has, what are your perspectives on consumers' willingness to pay for certain content? And as a company or as a business, what comfort level do you have in paying for exclusive rights to content? Does that drive a business for you?
Yeah, I mean, because we had the league deals, we had a lot of experience in working with it. And part of the strategy back then, doing all deals with the 5 major leagues, was pay the leagues for the rights to the video content, provide that free to our members as part of their monthly subscription price. And so that was the whole, it was sort of cable model where we offered $50 to $100 worth of premium content for the monthly price for your subscription. But the video streams just did not work. The ROI wasn't that good for us at the time, and I think we were early in the game, and that might have been one of the reasons why. But it didn't really work as well. But people are reluctant, have been reluctant to pay for the content. I mean, one of the major success stories is ML BAM, and that's because they say 70% of the fans are displaced fans. So if you're a Dodger fan living in New York, you can't get the LA Dodgers. You're willing to pay that $9.95 monthly price or $80 because you get content you really want. And so for the type of content that's important, that you want, you covet, you'll pay for it. But on the other hand, free is really the way.
Right. So I know you're an MLB subscriber because you watch the games online as well. And you're just sort of saying it's the value of the content. So the content you didn't have before, consumers haven't sort of shown a willingness to buy.
Well, like David's deal. I mean, if you're an NFL fan, you're a Redskins fan, you're living in Germany, and you can get NFL. I mean, you're going to pay for it. Just like what you guys did with DirecTV at the NFL. The reason that worked out so well is, again, there's 70% displaced fans. People, Eagles fans living in Florida, we're going to pay that price to get the content. DirecTV's been a huge success.
Yeah. Yeah, David, is your model somewhat a hybrid of those two? So you offer a lot of free content, free information, which is sort of what Yahoo's about. And once you draw people in, is there a level when you decide this content is worth putting behind a wall or charging somebody for because it clearly has the value that someone's willing to pay? How do you decide?
I think in general, with the ad market being where it is right now, our goal is to aggregate as large an audience as possible and sell advertising against it for the most part. That said, we have a couple premium products, and they're actually doing very well in this environment. So we have a college audio product where you can subscribe. It's pretty cheap, and you can listen to your college team playing football or basketball. We actually have some video rights as a part of that. We also have.
But did somebody make a decision with the college product that, hey, for X price with X number of subscribers, it's better than if you made it for free and you get some other number to sell advertising against? How do you make those decisions?
Yes, I mean, look, a lot of these are kind of legacy arrangements that started off in a world where people thought putting this content out there needs to be a subscription-based product, and you're seeing a lot of this stuff move to something else. So when I was at CBS, we sold the rights to the NCAA tournament for the first time to Yahoo, and they put it as part of a subscription package. The next year, it was a hybrid where it was a subscription package over here, but AOL bought a number of kind of free seats as a part of it, and then eventually it became free and ad supported because the market was there to support that, and they got a lot of attention this year around that product. So for us, I think free is definitely the way to go. Our fantasy game went free before anyone else's, and that's why we have such a large user base. But that being said, we do have a premium offering within fantasy, and the growth rate on that this year was extraordinary. It actually blew us away because everyone else was going free, and we thought, all right, free always beats pay for the most part, assuming the quality is there. So how are we going to be able to compete? But people proved this year that they're willing to pay a reasonable fee for something they think has value. So there are going to be pockets of subscription opportunities or for-pay opportunities I see out there. The NFL is a pay product right now on an international basis. Will that ultimately someday go to a free ad-supported model? Very possibly. But I think the movement in general is to free, but we're at a stage right now where people are still trying to figure out how do you justify and monetize putting broadband out there, and in a world where they're concerned about the cannibalization of their other product. Subscription is a way for people to dip their toe in the water and say they're putting stuff out there and experimenting without doing anything that hurts the mothership.
Right.
But I think it's all going to evolve.
Just to clarify on one point, over 90% of the content on MLB.com is actually free. And we're constantly looking very carefully over, what is something that we should try to go with a paid model and what should just be part of the free offering. And so literally every product that we come out with, we're very carefully thinking that through. But again, the good news for us and others as well is that the surprising willingness of people actually to pay, and because we're selling tickets as well, being able to have that patron integration where you have the credit card information, we found that it really works well across different areas.
Yeah. One more content question I have is there any content that's ancillary to sports? So Jimmy, you guys had a very successful concert model with Live Aid, and you're obviously involved in lots of content other than sport. Is there stuff that you sort of build in and around the sports experience? Yeah, we come for scores and schedules and maybe video highlights, but man, they really like to see something else. What do you guys build around, or how do you look at the world that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that's good about AWOL.com is you're not just a sports site, you're also part of the larger portal. So we are definitely looking at programming opportunities that not just in sports that cross Black Voices, which is our the leading African American portal, and AWOL Latino, which is the top 2 model. So we're actually looking at some sports deals that cross into like multi-ethnic deals that appeal to multi-ethnic advertisers like Budweiser, as an example.
That's good. Which is a great segue, because I want to talk a little bit about corporate America. Obviously, there's a lot of consumers are flocking to sports in such big numbers as we're talking about. Adam, have you found sort of any, I know you sort of have a very major property, so it's hard to sort of see an evolution of it, but are major corporations more interested in the content that we're providing on these different platforms, whether it's VOD or even on the network, than maybe the traditional advertisers of in-game advertising and stuff like that? Are you seeing it as a broader group of advertisers? Are you seeing a more experimental sort of budget that's being thrown in there? Or do people say, I get it, people who love sport are going to watch NFL Network, I must connect with them?
Traditionally, advertisers have been slow to adapt new platforms and new technologies, and a lot of what's existing now has been around for a while. This is the first year that you're really seeing the buzz. When we launched VOD, we couldn't get anybody to have any interest in sponsoring our VOD, and now it's something that's actually leads the deals. It's one of these things where it's timing, where when it becomes buzzworthy and they start to understand the model, that's what happens. I mean, people are talking about how potentially television is going to start to lose a sizable share to the internet. And the irony is people are watching more television than they ever have. So I really don't see those dollars going away. While the internet is going to build, if the dollars are going to be displacement dollars, they'll come from someplace else. I also think that the cable companies are standing in a very good place right now, where they could counteract any kind of erosion through new technologies. The ability to hyper-target your audience, so you can actually have zip code targeted spot buys, would be a huge advantage to any kind of company. So Toyota does buy, they could have a certain car advertised in certain zip codes and another one in other zip codes. So I do think that we've reached that sort of sea change point where the advertisers are embracing the digital universe, and they're starting to be a little bit more experimental with their dollars. But I don't think you're going to see a huge shift in who the advertisers are. I still think it's the same companies with their same budgets.
Right. And so for like Spot Runner, which is helping consumers, as you were describing, cable companies can get very local in how they're advertising. Is the technology driving some new people to advertising that may not have been before, or just a deeper relationship that they can establish?
Yeah, it's actually useful on a couple fronts. One is to advertise on television used to be extremely cumbersome, and now with the ease of digital transmission and with everybody owning a camcorder to create user-generated video, creating and distributing commercial spots has become increasingly simple compared to what it was. The other thing is having a middleman to help with this is important. I think people really don't understand the effectiveness of one advertising medium versus another. If somebody sees a banner ad and they don't click on it, what is the relative value of that? And I think having a media company who specializes this is going to become increasingly critical to be able to discern which of the medias are going to ultimately be the best value for their money.
Yeah. Brian, you guys, obviously big media company, big sales force. Are you tied into how, standard, I don't want to say traditional, but standard advertising works? So if somebody comes in and buys NFL football on Fox Sunday, do you find a way to work with those advertisers, or are you leading the charge in some cases by saying, look at where Fox Sports is, look at Fox Sports Mobile, look at Fox Sports Online, look at all the content we're doing, and are you bringing advertisers to the party?
Yeah, really good question. And the way we sell, there's a couple ways we go to market. There's the broadcast level, which really represents us falling in line with our broadcast sales team out of New York as they go to market to sell the two properties to my right, as well as NASCAR and BCS. And that's done kind of in the upfronts or in the windows when we need to go to market for those. So for example, with BCS, our broadcast sales team was in market selling our BCS programming back at the beginning of this year, back in Q1, late Q2, or early Q2 timeframe. And we were part of that process in terms of what our programming going to be that was adjacent to what was going to be available on the broadcast. The broadcast sale is fairly straightforward in terms of spots and inventory and enhancements, and then we have a little bit more flexibility, can get a little bit more creative about helping that sponsor activate, whether it's an Allstate or whoever or FedEx, activate that investment online or in mobile for that matter in terms of some of the content rights that we have with BCS. And then when you get to the FSN level, people kind of overlook the fact that FSN broadcasts more NBA, NHL, and MLB games than anybody else if you take all those owned and operated stations and all the team deals that we have and stitch those together. And so we'll do kind of what's called a wired buy where a sponsor like a Pepsi may want to come in and do something across MLB, across all of our regions. Again, we can become an extension of that, can become a platform to do that. So I'd say to characterize, are we driving that? That's a little disingenuous. It's still very much driven by the TV guys. But I think what they are recognizing, frankly, because the clients and the advertisers are asking for it, is they really, can't go in there with just here's the TV piece and that's it. They need to be able to represent, and that's where our team kind of goes in with them. We might go in right after the fact and say, here's your interactive component. And oh, by the way, it doesn't have to stop with just .com. There's mobile and there's other platforms that as they roll out, whether it's digital download and ad inventory starts to become relevant there, we can be a part of that buy.
One thing to sort of add to that, which is interesting, is it's true with the NFL, and it seems to be true in a lot of the major vertically integrated media companies, is a realignment of how ad sales is thinking. You used to have guys who would sell TV and guys who would sell new media, and it seems much more that everyone is going to the approach of a sales guy as a sales guy. So if he's going to sell the NFL, he's going to sell NFL.com, and he's going to sell NFL Network, etc. So I think that's sort of an indicator of where we're headed.
Right.
Just to agree with that as well. As in baseball, I would say there's probably a 70% say overlap between the offline and what MLB Advanced Media is. So you see a lot of the same brands, DHL, Chevy, etc. So.
And that's because they've already made an emotional investment in baseball, so then there's ancillary dollars that sort of, here's something else you can do with baseball, or is that because?
Yeah, that's part of it. And the other thing is that, because of the internet as a platform, you have opportunities for activation. And so, for example, an auto company wants quality leads, people that are going to come into the showroom, et cetera. And so by doing specific promotions, that in addition to the TV campaign that's going on, then to be able to actually collect, email addresses and are you interested in, the new Silverado, et cetera. There are very organic ways that, advertisers are now very privy to and understand that really it's part of a larger experience, and, there's unique ways to activate online.
David, your model is very interesting to me too, because you're not necessarily a traditional media company like Fox or one of the leagues. You sell banners and buttons and search terms obviously as well. How are you sort of expanding the advertising opportunity or sponsor opportunity for your partners, corporate partners?
Well, just like Brian, we have a network too. It's just a different type of network. It's an online network. So we have a combination of people who are selling sports specifically, and they're out in the marketplace working with sports marketers, selling sponsorship packages around NASCAR, around NFL, around our various programs. But we also have the benefit of leveraging off the fact that we have a nationwide network sales team that is talking to all these advertisers about a lot of different things. So the hybrid approach allows any advertiser who comes in who says, I want to reach an 18 to 34-year-old male, or I want to reach an 18 to 34-year-old male with this kind of income, in this geography, as specific as they want. We have the ability to do that behavioral targeting. So the ads that you'd see running through Yahoo Sports are a combination of sponsorship sales as well as kind of worldwide network buys. And I would say that if you want to reach sports fans, there are a lot more sports fans living on the Yahoo network than are even in Yahoo Sports. So even though we had a record month and did really well, the number of uniques we have in sports pales in comparison to the number of uniques we have at Yahoo kind of globally. I mean, Yahoo last month worldwide had 600 million unique users, and over 200 million of those users were registered on the network when they're on the network. So, you know, the promise of the internet was always the ability to provide that direct, targeted, actionable item where someone, if they click, can continue on and ultimately consummate whatever that experience is. And I don't think anyone in the industry has ever fully realized that promise, but we're starting to move in that direction. We're starting to mine the data in a more significant way. We're starting to build packages for advertisers in a more compelling way. We've got a long way to go, but we've got a lot of the assets there to bring to bear on something like this. So it's a different approach than what some of the other guys do, but you got to go with what your assets are.
Can you tell us a little bit about, you may not, so sorry if I'm leading here, with Intel, because I saw some press about it, and what was interesting was it wasn't just about a big marketer or a big company who was trying to get in front of your audience by buying, you know, search terms or by buying banner or graphical advertising. You did something sort of unique there and leveraged technology and your brand, you know, to make something work.
We have a global strategic partnership group that works with certain marketers who have a very specific agenda. And in this case, Intel's launching the whole Intel Vive platform, and they wanted to actually show off what that technology can do around some unique products that were built. So when they came to us, they funded the R&D for us to be able to create effectively a living room application for our fantasy users. So now when you play fantasy on Yahoo Sports, you know, the ultimate win is going to be being able to watch a game on the TV and have your fantasy stats and information right there next to the team. It's not just the information that the network's putting out there, which is in this particular game, here's how this person is performing. It has the ability to put your team up there next to whatever game you're playing. So we launched this this season, and it's going to roll out across multiple sports. And it's a clever application. It is on a Media Center PC platform. So we're all waiting for the day. And I spent a lot of time back in the day looking at the interactive TV side of things. And when ultimately that stuff really rolls out and is in everyone's homes, and the digital boxes allow you to have this interactivity, we think it's a perfect application. But for us, it was an experiment funded by a great partner, and I say partner because they really just weren't an advertiser in this. They came to the table, they were heavily involved in everything, and now they're involved in the marketing of this application after the fact.
That's great. Jimmy, why do such big, Fortune 50 companies associate themselves with Yahoo? I mean, in the sports space, and it's not disparaging, Yahoo's the leader, ESPN, they've got a lot of other more traffic sites, but AOL always seems to attract the biggest and sort of brightest corporate partners. What is it about AOL that enables you to do that?
Are you talking sports specifically or just AOL?
Yeah, in sport. I mean, if you go into your sports section, you don't have Evan.com as the sponsor. You've got GM. You've got, you've got some significant companies there. How do you continue to attract them?
Two answers. And we have a former salesperson in the audience, and she knows how frustrated I've been. I'm very jealous when I hear David say that. But one thing Yahoo has, Fox Sports has, obviously the league sites have, is a dedicated sports sales force. We have never had one. It's been really frustrating, but it's because our people, the sales office nationally is broken down regionally, not content specific, except for perhaps music and entertainment. So mostly, it's like David said, if someone covets an 18 to 34-year-old male, or whatever, however you slice and dice the demo, we can sell that, and we sell that across the channels. And a big reason has been our acquisition of ad.com a few years ago has been a home run, and for optimizing the ad buys. So a lot of the big ad buys you see are not specifically for sports, but therefore trying to reach a specific demo.
I see. By the way, if there's any questions at any particular point, feel free to raise your hand. We'll try and pull you out. I wanted to follow up on something that David was talking about with interactive TV and how consumers are maybe using that platform to interact with sports. When I say interactive TV for purposes of this panel, we're going to keep that very broad. It'll include things like broadband or set-top box and stuff like that. David, tell us some of the things that ML BAM is doing. I know you mentioned Mosaic before, which really is a cool application. Maybe tell us a little bit more about that and some other ways that you guys are using quote interactive television to enhance your fans' experience?
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly one of the things is that in terms of the content and how it gets produced, if you were to visit the MLBAM offices, it all starts with great content. And so there are literally rows and rows of Final Cut Pro editing stations that are working 24/7, making sure that there's a huge wealth of content. Then with that, the Mosaic application that I mentioned, and you can eyeball a free demo of it at the site, is literally, it's having those 6 games on concurrently. This is during obviously the peak of the regular season, and being able, to have smart alerts being sent out in real time. And again, it's because there's 24/7 coverage of a bullpen of people that are watching all of these games and are pushing out the kind of information that you want. And so with that, there really is an effort to really see, well, what is working and what is the kind of traction that we're getting around it. And I mean, frankly, one of the things that's interesting about MLBAM is that it is physically separate from the mothership MLB, which is over on 5th Avenue, and we're in Chelsea Market, for those of you familiar with Manhattan. And so there really is an interesting thing when we started off about, what does 5 years look like off in the future. There are a lot of, I guess, conversations over beers, both around our offices and over at 5th Avenue, about how the two are kind of, potentially, heading in the same direction in terms of what it might look like. And certainly with the, sensibility about being able to, have that kind of interactive content, again, edited in multiple ways, etc., that we really are trying to push the envelope. And one of the things that's exciting about it is that we do home grow a lot of our solutions. And again, we're not running a huge portal of the scale of Yahoo, but at the same time, we're very open-minded about looking at cool new stuff. And so I think that in the spring, there's a whole digital download strategy that you'll see, and we're very familiar with what's happening with DRM, et cetera, and think that we have some tricks up our sleeves. And you may have noticed that we took back all of our content off of iTunes, those podcasts, simply because, again, it's with our philosophy that we want to have people coming to MLB.com. And so with that, we're always looking for new partners that have exciting new products in the interactive space, because we know, we don't invent everything, and really try to choose best of breed ongoing.
How many people in the audience have used a website or a cell phone or something ancillary to the TV product to view or consume sports? Oh, that's a lot. I just wanted to see people's hands go up too. But if for those of you who watch football, one of the NFL's partners, DirecTV, has an interactive application. I believe maybe you could talk more about how you're watching a game on a particular channel, but they have other channels where you can watch scores or know which games are in the red zone. Which games have a team in the red zone. You can sort of interact. What other interactive TV things are you doing at the NFL?
Yeah, the DirecTV Sunday Ticket application is great. It has Mosaic, see the rest. You also, on that Mosaic, you have the ability to select which audio you want to listen to, and the ability to call up scores and stats. But one of the potentially more ubiquitous products that we're really excited about is a fantasy product, which sort of plays back into that theme. And the idea is a video-based fantasy product, which we've demoed and we've tested, and the user satisfaction is fantastic. The idea would be you'd enter your fantasy team, and when the Sunday day is complete, you have the video highlights of every scoring play from everyone on your team and everyone that you're playing.
So instead of watching the highlights from the Jets playing, the Lions, you're actually watching Adam's you're seeing your own team's fantasy highlights.
So you're seeing the same highlights, but you're seeing them organized in terms of your fantasy, which was very, very appealing to fantasy players, because they didn't want to have to watch every game to see the highlights that matter to them. One of the interesting things about that as well, and this ties back to something we talked about, is what is going to be the model for this? Is this something which is going to be a subscription-based, or something which is free and then advertising-based? And there's a lot of potential in interactive advertising, but until the product is rolled out on a wide basis, or it is somewhat ubiquitous, it's tough to get those ad dollars when it's patchwork. So we're still figuring out where that's going to be, but that's something which will probably be fairly well deployed next season.
Right. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question in regards to interactive applications and solutions as it relates to providing a better enhanced, interactive environment for the fan. Whether it be fantasy or whether it be, prime time. Makes no difference to me. And the question is, you talk about rolling out an application and, for the NFL next season per se. But realistically, there's an application being developed now that I know of. I'm with Verizon, just so you know, and I'm aware that you probably are aware of, in some cases or another, that are doing things that maybe even are going to, succumb to those other interactive applications that make more of a better experience, allowing for advertising and marketing there. I mean, you talked about looking for new stuff. I mean, I'm curious from an R&D standpoint, just how active are you guys really? There's one thing to talk about. And say, it's another thing to talk about, we're going to do this and do that, and say, we invested $100 million, we got to stick with it, but it's a better application. That's literally being developed by a third party. And you know it's going to be better. So how do you bring that into an R&D environment, apply it to the reality of catching up with what's going on in the industry, knowing that it's got to roll out in an interactive environment, provide better solutions and technologies, and editing and production of video.
Prior to David Katz's tenure at Yahoo, he worked at CBS for some time and was involved heavily in some interactive TV. David, maybe you can give a perspective on, when do you look at what is an application worth, sort of investing in, building, or buying on the outside, and when is it that as an organization do you make that decision to create something for an interactive experience?
I mean, for us, we don't start with what's the coolest application out there, and then how do we get that into the system. We start with what's the strategy in terms of how we're going to go after sports fans. What do sports fans really want? And depending on the platform we're playing on, some of us may be in TV, some of us may be more pure internet or mobile and internet. We have to say, what do the sports fans want? What kind of experience is there? How do we enhance that experience for them? And what are the tools to enable people to do it? Now, being at a place like Yahoo right now, we benefit from the fact that we have a corporate development team that is looking at virtually every technology that's out there, and an engineering department that is looking at all this stuff. And very often investments are being made in other parts of the company for other applications. And the beauty of sitting where I sit is I get to go, like on Thursday, I go to this product council meeting where I'm going to sit there and be exposed to a lot of the things being done around the company. And I might say, you know what, Flickr is a great application for us to put into Yahoo Sports. We'd love to bring in a photo sharing service. It might not have been something that we originally thought of, but our strategy is to allow users to do this around sports content. Flickr's the right application, they've done it. We also have the opportunity, if we find something out there, to surface it up to these groups to look at either licensing it ourselves or buying it. So I don't know if we speak, I can't speak for everyone else up here, but the R&D portion at a place like Yahoo is a critical component of what we do. The question is always, how early stage do you get involved with something like this versus waiting for it to actually be, exposed? It's easy now to say that, social networking is an important part of everyone's sites because we've seen the success of some of these other sites. Now the question is, what are the right pieces of social networking that you need to integrate into sports for the sports fans? And I imagine we all do this on a daily basis to try to figure out how to create that compelling experience.
Yeah, I'll echo David's comments. We do the same thing. If there's a really cool new technology that'll come in, we don't just look at it, well, it rolls up to Time Warner. So we'll have SI.com look at it, Turner Sports Interactive, HBO Sports. It's an application that we can spread across. And not only in sports, it might be really cool new search technology, whatever it is, that it's also applicable in our news channel, which has similar type of users and functionalities. It can be used in our entertainment channel, and we roll that out to people.com and TMZ.com. So, and it's very similar to David.
From the Fox perspective, we look at it really based on the multiple screens. So the first screen is the broadcast screen. And so we work with, for example, the Fox broadcast crew. We've done it this NFL season. And a couple of weeks ago, actually did an application called Fox Fan Chat, because they obviously see and have a lot of research around, and we saw the hands in the room, what percentage of users are actually doing something interactive, whether they've got a laptop on their lap or they've got their PC up in the other room and are going back and forth. So we've been able to develop an application where a user, in a lower third, based on the play of the game, and we did it with the TO game when we went back to Philly. Joe Buck will then tease Fox Fan Chat, drives a lot of people to the site to actually, talk about the play, and then the broadcast guys in the truck will pull out a couple of quotes to do that, polling, those types of things, to just see what works, what resonates, and what, frankly, is there a business model that we can wrap around, right? Can we get an advertiser or a sponsor? My friend Ed here, we obviously don't do it in the broadcast, right? We do the pregame show. But that's the broadcast-centric view. The online or kind of non-broadcast-centric view is we have got a group in Fox Interactive Media called Fin Labs, where we're looking at developing a lot of these types of applications. We'll take it to the broadcast guys and say, hey, what do you think? What do you want to test? And some of the best examples are all the things that are happening around the whole gadget and widget space. In figured out, and this is something we do maybe more in concert with Microsoft, who's our portal partner, around creating gadgets and widgets that can live both in their live.com environment and can also be available on our site. Because one of the things that we're seeing is that metaphor online, where I want a scoreboard module of my team and I want to maybe rip that off of foxsports.com and put it somewhere else where I actually spend a lot of time, that metaphor might be the one that actually resonates with users when they get back on the TV screen. So we are, to your point, doing R&D through our Film Labs group, but we do it very closely in concert with the FBC folks and the FSN folks, who are kind of the keepers of what's that experience when somebody's watching sports on television.
Just a slightly different wrinkle on it. MLBAM has a head count of about 400 people, and if you can imagine the office space, it really does look like a .com from a few years ago. And with that, there is a certain vibe about being fast and being entrepreneurial and not having to get a lot of approvals from a lot of different divisions. If it's something that our customers want, and if we think that it rocks, then we can go and greenlight it and move forward with it. So,
just a quick follow-up. What if the technology is already accepted by a professional sports team already, but it has yet to even come out of the service? I mean, isn't that something that generally, wouldn't you think that's...
When I was at the NFL, we would, there were sort of two things we always looked at. One is, if it was really big enough, it would hit our radar, and we'd find out about it. Until then, there were hundreds and dozens of hundreds of companies to chase down. And the second one, and I think it's representative of the sample of people who are up here or the companies that they represent, everybody is in a bit of an advantaged position of not having to be the first mover. Baseball might pride themselves a little bit more on being fast and quick to the market, but certainly when I was at the NFL, we felt very clearly we didn't have to be the first one to start that technology, because if it was any good, we're going to come in with a really big club afterwards and sort of take it over. So it was
exclusively maintain it, or do you actually seek out just to license it and then actually know that everybody else will want a piece of it as well?
It depends on the situation. I mean, we are first and foremost a content company. We're becoming a distribution company. We're not a technology company, and so we are happy to let that come to us, whether it's through a middle provider or an end distributor.
I'm hoping that we can speak afterwards and you can tell us what we're missing. These guys. So we've already been in business with Mark Cuban. We spent $6.5 billion.
And 6 billion reasons why Yahoo.
The new Mark Cuban. All right, it's $8 billion.
So I know we're running a little short on time, and again, if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand and interrupt us. But one area I wanted to talk about, because I think it might be the next battleground or frontier, depending on how you look at it, is mobile. Sports fans are very mobile. You're on the go, whether it's at your kid's soccer game Sunday afternoon and you're missing your football game, or you happen to be traveling and you can't get that baseball game you're trying to get. Brian, tell us a little bit about Fox Sports Mobile. I know you guys are a leader in the space, and why do mobile applications work for brands like Fox, where a lot of the content is somewhat generic or commoditized, whether it's scores and stats and stuff like that? How do you see the mobile space?
So I think the way we've taken a step back and look at the mobile space is you have to differentiate between data services and video. And to a large extent, at least our point of view, is that the data services, well, today you can get in these applications and are packaged up in applications where there's a subscription model. We frankly feel that WAP will finally get there at some point, and those services, those data applications, the scores, the stats, the Agate stuff, will kind of be there on everybody's site from a WAP standpoint. There'll be an ad model that will show up, and that'll just get folded into how we go to market from an advertising standpoint. Video, we think, is a very different opportunity, and frankly is the big opportunity for us, which is why when we make our programming investments, we think about very much, how can we program and create content and then publish it across different platforms, most notably now video. And so that model feels like, at least as we sit here today, to be evolving to be very much like a cable model, where there's a carriage fee or a per sub fee. Video advertising may show up in the same way that advertising showed up in the cable world eventually. I mean, if you look back at 1980, advertising wasn't really happening in the cable world, and so we're not necessarily seeing it in mobile today, but certainly on a per sub basis, that model's there. And while the carriers today are really kind of, I think, casting a pretty wide net on programming, we think that they will gravitate towards and want to access the programmers and the brands that will provide content for them, and that's where we've been successful. And again, it fits right in our wheelhouse around investing in video programming. and the infrastructure we put in place that we can scale to whatever the mobile technology has become, what the consumer's going to want in terms of video programming down the road.
Yeah, and obviously your brand, I mean, is huge. If somebody was deciding on purchasing sort of a multi-sport mobile application, there's not, you know, multi-sport application number one. If someone sees Fox Sports Mobile, I guess ESPN's mobile application aside, a bit contrary to that, but you know, people are going to associate themselves with the brand, and in so much that you're providing that valued content and the high-end video and sort of a benefit, your brand will rise through. Jimmy, at AOL, you guys have obviously a broad mobile play, whether it's, you know, getting your IMs on your phone and stuff like that. How do you guys see the mobile space and how reaching fans and consumers through that platform?
Yeah, mobile's important, but and just specifically in sports, I think fantasy is going to drive it. Fantasy and scoring is going to drive it. And just looking at this panel and just going back 11 years of doing these conferences, you look at, I remember with Yahoo, you know, back in '96, they bought a company of 3 people, and that was 75% of their sports programming. And they focused on fantasy, they got in and they won. I remember going to the NFL in '98 with Ann Kirshner and talking to NFL.com about partnering to be their fantasy partner, and NFL wouldn't touch it. They said, we don't believe in fantasy, it smacks too closely to gambling and odds, we got to stay away. NFL didn't do it. NBA.com was the first one to step up, and they saw the traffic. Now, the majority of the reason NFL.com is so the increase in traffic and time spent is, you know, you tie that in fantasy. Obviously, the same thing with baseball and what they've done uniquely in the last 2 years with their licensing deal. So, fantasy drove the sports on the internet, and I think fantasy and live scoring is going to drive sports on the phones.
And obviously in baseball, you guys have somewhat doubled down because you have your own mobile operation. You guys produce your own mobile games, you produce your own mobile applications, you're doing it all in-house as opposed to buying it out.
Absolutely. And so, you know, we're very strong in text alerts that you can sign up, and you know, when you're in the venues as well, to give you scores on updates on scores. We're the first one to go out with a mobile audio subscription that you can purchase. So it's a little bit retro, like being able to put the old transistor radio, but it's your phone for a live stream on that. And of course, you know, we're big believers in, you know, live streaming video feeds in the online world, and certainly look to mobile and our mobile partners as really an exciting opportunity to get our experience on that phone as mobile live streaming video.
Great. Well, that was all the questions that I had. I really want to honestly thank all you guys up here for participating. I know it's local for some and not local for others, so thank you. I enjoyed the conversation.